Are we in the last stage, step 10 of a tyrannical takeover? I'll go through this article, let you make the decision. You decide. But I think as I go through this article, I think a lot of stuff is going to come to light as to why it's happening the way it is and what is probably almost guaranteed to happen in the future. Okay. There are 10 steps um, that leaders that wanted to crush a democracy take. Okay. We're now on step 10. We're on the last step. Traitors are dissolving the boundaries of the United States. Same places, same things taken in other nations. You see it across the world. I mean, you see it everywhere. The pandemic was used to strip us of our liberties and conceptually terraform America into being ready to accept a CCP style World Economic Forum guided post-human and post-constitutional world. We're at war. Now, this ain't a lot of times when you say war, people think violence, guns, bombs, explosions. No, there is also information wars. Okay, internet wars. We're at war right now. The federal government, institution, and agencies of various kinds in the media has been weaponized against us. That is true. You have seen it in the last 2 years, and you continue to see it. Hopelessness leads to inaction, and without action, we are guaranteed to lose everything. The one thing that technocrats, technology cannot compete in an analog world. Analog devices and in-person relationships, that's where our greatest strength lies. We have moved so much to digital technology. I believe digital technology, for all the usefulness we have it for, is a lot to blame on the downfall of society. You look at the years when there was no smartphones, how much different stuff was. You talked to your neighbor. You didn't have a phone on you 24 hours a day. You had a home phone. If you weren't home, somebody called, you weren't going to answer the phone because you weren't there. You didn't carry this phone around you where you answer, every time it rings. I think technology has pushed us a lot to where we are right now. This article was written about a book, Naomi Wolf. The Bodies of Others, the New Authoritarians, the C-19, and the War Against Human was released at the end of May 2022. If you want a good read, great book. If you're really interested in covering a little bit more in depth, I'm just going to kind of breeze through some of the stuff that's happening right now. But if you want more, in thought stuff, I would recommend it. Get it, read it, get familiarized with what is going to happen, and as it happens, you can see, where this United States is headed. We don't we don't challenge and stand firm against the global control agenda, it's really important to realize that the progression towards tyranny and loss of freedoms is neither new or accidental. It has nothing to do with the pandemic or biosecurity. Uh, they're just conventional justifications for the unjustifiable. This is a comprehensive plan for global takeover that's been in the works for many decades, and we are now seeing the final implementation. We'll go back 9/11. Around terrorism and the terror threat post 9/11 were being used in such a ways to hype fear and strip us of our civil liberties, aka the Patriot Act. Um, they you start by invoking a terrifying threat. We've seen that a lot. They want to put fear in society. It can be a real threat, but it's hyped. You go on to surveil citizens, create militia groups unaccountable to the rule of law. Now, when people say militia groups, they think of, military type militia groups. There's other militia groups out there. Start a gulag. Where's all the Jan 6 people? You start to demonize whistleblowers and critics. You start to call dissent, treason, or espionage or subversion. And then you get to step 10, which is where we're at now, which is martial law, declaring emergency law. That is the final thing. In 2020, New York Governor Cuomo declared that you weren't allowed to have more than 6 people in your home. A lot of this was across the United States. You weren't allowed in gatherings, 3 people, 5 people, no more than that. I seen where neighbors were calling police on other neighbors that had too many people over. It was just ridiculous. By implementing that, what he declared, it's a violation of the First and Fourth Amendments. Your right to privacy and right to assemble. There wasn't very much pushback on when these, lockdown rules were being implemented. We all pretty much complied, and there were some that didn't, but the majority complied, and they know that now that we will comply, most of us, so they will continue to push it more and more and more. We're seeing a wholesale race to exploit what is messaged as a global pandemic in such a way to strip us of our remaining liberties and to terraform America to accept the CCP style world, the WEF World Economic Forum, lifestyle. The bad actors is, the WEF, basically rich people, trying to make things. Chinese Communist Party, CCP. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They donate a lot of money to very, shady, things. Big tech companies message the pandemic policy in various ways to suit their needs. a lot of policies were rolled out as related to a public health emergency really served to kill off the human advantage and transfer assets to big tech companies. Okay, we're going to go over. Yes, we are at war. It's not the war you think. It is a information war, is what we're at, what we're dealing with right now. The Americans have not been able to see this treaty, this is the WHO, to easily lobby their representatives. And it's the example why, international treaties are dangerous. Wish people would wake up. I've been warning people for about 6 months that a war was being waged here against us, the United States. We are at war, even though we think we're not. As I said, we don't see bullets flying. We don't think as a war. It's a new kind of war. It's a war that the CCP has developed just very skillfully. Stalinist has also developed it very skillfully. It has never been done to us like this before. But if you look at the big picture, please, our southern border is open. Hundreds of thousands of people are pouring in. A lot of people are fighting aged men from Ukraine and Afghanistan coming in, through the border. There's a lot of other countries coming in too. Millions of dollars of state-of-the-art equipment, night vision goggles, was left in Afghanistan. Why was it left in Afghanistan? Why'd we botch the withdrawal from Afghanistan? The people coming into this country, they're not being identified. They're not really being vetted, the destinations are not being identified to where they're going. Where are these people being taken to? Who was taken to where? We're very vulnerable. And then you get the north, Canada. WF puppet Justin Trudeau, when he declared martial law for the 24 hours when they were kicking the truckers out of Ontario for protesting. Now, if you go back and watch them videos, I want you to look at a lot of them officers per se, military. They were very unidentifiable. I mean, he really didn't have patches, names, badges, etc. It's the same black, clad, armored up people that you've seen in France that were protesting against the Green Pass. You see that group, in a lot of things happening through the world, and it's usually the same group of people that really has no identifying marks on who they're with. Let's go. Emerging powers are being used as a weapon of war. April 2022, Biden extended the emergency law for the 8th time. And he didn't even pretend it was for public health. He stated it was due to instability in Iraq. By extending his emerging powers, he can funnel millions of dollars without accountability into the Department of Health and Human Services. So he's basically weaponizing Health and Human Services all the way down to boards of health, which was weaponized during the lockdowns. Nothing legally prevents right now, if the New York state governor wanted to create a quarantine facility and have a regulation to drag people off to an open-ended quarantine if they are exposed to a bloodborne pathogen. There is nothing standing in the way of them, you know, coming up with this type of, law. I don't want to say law. Um, this type of thing. They just there's nothing standing in the way. We've heard a lot about the camps. You know, we heard that a lot the last 2 years. But there is nothing that stops them that them mercenaries, aka police, uh, military, showing up at your house and saying you're a public health threat and dragging you away. And they consider mental health. They're putting mental health into public health. That way they can use that as a reason to, if you have no sickness, maybe you're not mentally well, to be out in society. We need to take you and put you in these camps. I know this sounds way out there, but as you go through this, and I think as we see in the coming months, especially when it gets closer to November, I think a lot of this is going to, come to head. There was during White House press briefing, the White House COVID secretary, COVID guy, I don't know, he's some guy. He was asked the question, okay, will the schools be fully opened in the fall? He did not answer that question. He was basically hurried off the stage, and that question was never answered. Why was it not answered? What are they planning for the fall? Who are the perpetrators? Okay, who are the people that are basically behind us? We kind of know. Bill and Melinda Gates, Big Pharma, Eco Health Alliance, the Committee for State and Territorial Epidemiologists. Basically, third party nonprofits allow government agencies like the CDC to offshore their criminality. We heard about data being mismanaged or manipulated when it came to the last 2 years. With a lot of that's coming out that they had the figures wrong. These numbers weren't right. It's kind of funny how things change. You got Amazon, Google, Microsoft. Google owns Baseline, which you had to sign into at CVS to get a PCR test. Microsoft made the vaccine passports. Bill Gates invested in the vaccines. It's just amazing how all these big names, are coming together to kind of bring this, I guess, their end game and what they want. They bring it even closer and finally bring it to head to where the rich, rule the world, and everybody below is Nobody. Your life isn't worth anything. Uh, we heard. Well, yeah, we've heard. If you pay attention to some of the border news, you won't see this on mainstream media, but you hear a lot about organ harvesting. Okay, Brian Oshia, he is a trained investigator, spent 12 years military intelligence and special forces. He has evidence showing that by 2049, China wants to be the biggest repository of all the world's DNA. That means the DNA of everybody on the planet. Now, it was rumored every time you get one of them nasal swabs, you get a nasal swab, they're taking DNA off of you, okay? It was being rumored them were being sent back to a repository in China. I don't know how true that is, but you see uh, organ trafficking is a lucrative business in China. Startups are popping up everywhere to assess the health of your organs. Are they using this database as they can pick and choose? Hey, we want go get this person's heart because this person's heart's, you know, healthy, and put it in this rich person's, chest. Give them a new heart. They had respect for human life. The laws being passed about abortion. I mean, you got laws that wants to be able to kill a kid up to, I think it was one. I don't know. Some of the states were really out there. I mean, there is no respect for human life at all going on right now in the country. As you can see, can't get baby formula. Food prices are skyrocketing. Shortages of food. We live in unprecedented times. Klaus Schwab, I did a video on him, who he is. His father was a Nazi. He worked in the eugenics, program. And Bill and Melinda Gates also carry out eugenic program right now. Everywhere we look, we see the Nazi mentality at work behind the scenes. It didn't vanish; it just simply went underground. We hear about a lot of Nazis about Ukraine. They have this Nazi, regiment, I guess, of soldiers, and that was one of the reasons why Putin went in, I guess. All was being said why he went in. We're seeing the Nazi approaches to human life, a two-tier society. Okay, the jabbed versus the unjabbed, life versus unworthy life. They did that with the Jews. They seen Jews as subhuman people, and they disposed of them. We're seeing that right now in society with, the whole jab thing. I don't know why people ask if you are. I always say, it's none of your business. Do you walk around and say, hey, I get all my childhood vaccines, I get them all. It's just another thing they're pushing, two-tier society. They're trying to put side against side. Either on this side or you're on this side. the lockdowns. All of humanity was restricted in advance of a massive threat of their assets, massive theft of their assets. It's going to continue unless we resist. They're going to continue to do it until we start standing up and saying enough is enough. So where we go into, they call them technocrats or technology-driven, companies that want you to use technology. They can't hack or surveil you in person if you don't have your cell phone on you. I've said many times they can track your cell phone. You have location turned off. I know in police we've triangulated cell phones, even with location, even with some of the new phones, even with the phone off. The cell phone can still be triangulated into a pretty much very, very small area. Now you see physical bookstores, physical libraries, churches, physical money. None of that can be surveilled or tracked because it's physical. A lot of this physical stuff they want to take digital. You have ebooks now. You have, for money, we all pretty much pay with plastic. We use a card. That can all be tracked and regulated. Same thing with electric cars. They're not pushing electric cars for the green agenda. Okay? The United States make up what? Like probably 4% of the Earth's population. So you think us doing that little bit is really going to make a change when the rest of the world isn't doing anything? No. Electric cars can be tracked, can be turned off, can be limited on what days you can drive, how long you can drive. They know where you go. That can be done with electric car that you really can't do with a gas engine. I mean, it's easier with electric. Most of the stuff during the pandemic was communicated through digital technology. Google, Facebook, Twitter. They deplatform people because for putting, they call misinformation out during that. Predictions for the futures. This is where it starts getting kind of interesting, okay? Pandemic in the last 2 years was just a warm-up. And we are in the lull before the storm. The White House has basically been captured by China. You have a puppet government. If you look at all the Pfizer documents that are being released, it's a biological attack, basically, if you pay attention to them documents. Food supplies are under attack. You got fires everywhere, food processing plants. I just seen that chicken farm that caught on fire, and they don't know why. We are under occupation now. It's not going to happen in the future. We have to notice that we are already under occupation. Food shortages, famine, power failures, gas shortages, all things that I've read. I got a power shortage video coming out soon. The breakdown of transportation and distribution of goods. the collapse of one or more of the currencies, the collapse of the entire financial system, cyber attacks, nuclear war. Any and all of these are on the table right now. They can use any of them or all of them to push their agenda. They want to, do. This is the immediate timeline. Basically, this is where it starts getting, you start open your eyes. Right now, they're saying basically November coming up, 2022, is going to be a very dangerous month in America. I agree. If you can't answer the question if schools are going to be open in the fall, what are you planning? People will stop at nothing, and I'm literally afraid of nuclear attack. The war in Ukraine, the proxy war we're facing. We're sending money over there. We're sending weapons over there. It could be an excuse for attack on the whole land, and it would be blamed on Russia. But it could be done by anyone. So that would be cyber attacks, terrorism. What do we always hear? It's always Russia. It's Putin's gas hikes, Putin's food shortages. They're blaming it on Russia. Beyond a false flag right now, I believe the White House was captured by China. Basically, they're running the show. It kind of seems like that is. I talked about the Pfizer documents. Every single thing the Biden administration has done in terms of messaging and symbolism has served to lower the status of the United States intentionally. Every little things like checking his watch 3 times at a military funeral, that's not an accident. Those things are highly scripted. You do remember that when he checked his watch when them soldiers were coming home, that was a big deal. I mean, a lot of people covered that. Over and over again, you see external hand dialing down the prestige and authority of the United States. The withdrawal from Afghanistan that did nothing but trash our stand internationally. At this point, we have a captured White House. That's very dangerous because it means the FDA may or may not let poisonous food reach our shelves. We see a lot of stuff about, listeria and, in food right now, food recalls being done. FDA turned a blind eye or concluded when the Pfizer documents were released, what it said in there. FDA can't be trusted. CDC can't be trusted anymore. You can expect more disorienting narratives of confusing public events and more monkeypox, smallpox, tuberculosis. These are all things they were pushed right up to November. November is anticipated to be a giant crisis, which will be, it's not safe to leave your home. It's either going to be because of nuclear war, everything's radioactive, or it's going to be because of, biological, it's, smallpox is everywhere, or there are mass shooters on the loose everywhere. You got to stay home. This will drive voters to vote by mail instead of in person. There's no way these people are acting like there's going to be midterm elections. They're acting like there's never going to be accountability. There's never going to be investigations. There's never going to be impeachments. So there will be no midterms. If I were to bet, I bet the midterms will be dramatically compromised, if not taken off the table altogether or made cursory. The coming months, we'll see more gangs, okay? We'll see more gangs wreaking havoc in inner cities and businesses. We've seen that in the you know, last year or so. We've seen a lot of businesses being burned. Their job will be to terrorize everyone and create the complete loosening of societal bonds and civil contract. The funding of the police directly contributes to that. It's part of the process and it's worked. Along with that, there'll continue to be disruptions in the food supply, certain disruptions in the energy grid, and possible cyber attacks. There's going to be parts of the country that are going to be in darkness or unable to communicate intimately. That way add to our fear. All this is going to play out around the world, and they're not going to stop. The stuff that I just briefly covered there is what is probably going to happen. I mean, we see a lot of this happening now. We see the mass shooters happening now. Come November, or before November, I think a lot of stuff is going to change, and it's not going to change for the good. Historical timeline. Tyrannical regime takes over. The next step will be involved a period where opposition leaders, civil rights leaders, outspoken journalists, and editors will be arrested and taken to some unknown location. Some will just simply disappear. That's the point at which the civil society just shuts down, even without a coup, because everyone's too afraid. We see that now. Everybody's too afraid to stand up. We just go with the flow. After that, mercenaries will show up to reimpose order, but they won't be our mercenaries. They'll be working on behalf of the enemy, the regime that wants to take over. At that point, the United States will formally cease to exist. Takeover will be complete. We are in a time of radical testing of our free will. If we don't take up sufficient numbers and the end result is already determined, without pushback, it can't end any other way. Fortunately, there are robust grassroots resistance in this United States, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but the Second Amendment is the key to the U.S. having hope that other countries don't have. What are they attacking right now? The Second Amendment. They want to take your guns. Without your guns, you can't fight back. So the recommendations moving forward, as I was saying, get training. You need to defend your family. You need to learn to hunt. You gotta hunt. You gotta hunt for food. I mean, there will be, if there's no food in the store, you gotta get food from somewhere. Make friends with farmers. Learn how to grow food. Plant your own gardens, and prepare to plan what you will do when there's no electricity or you can't communicate. There's no, cell phones, no communications at all. Print out your bank statements and asset statements because, after this great reset, you should expect that there'll be some giant blitz and it'll all vanish. All that information will vanish. All your money will vanish. Your home, your deed to your house, Um, if you can't produce documents, the new regime can claim ownership. But I think even if you produce documents, they may still claim ownership. Much can be done at the state level. That's very true. States have a lot of powers over what goes on. You know, we see that with legalized marijuana. The federal government still says it's illegal. You got states that has legalized it. Um, there's a lot of work, a lot of stuff that can be done in the states. Now, I agree with this statement. States must accept and prepare to forego federal funding and subsidies to retain their sovereignty. We need a new movement where institutions and local leaderships publicly forswear any and all corruptible funding from the CCP, the federal government, the WF, or anything else. These individuals and institutions must be willing to disclose the source of all funding and reject any funds that might take them beholden to enemy power. We see a lot of companies that receive federal funding that don't want to stand up because if they do stand up, they may lose their federal funding. Ultimate goal right now, okay, we need to build an alternative society. The ultimate goal right now is to begin creating a whole alternative civil society. Basically a reset, but not a technocratic, transhumanistic reset, imagined by the globalist. We need to create uncorrupted science, uncorrupted journalism, uncorrupted medicine. We need governors, businesses, leaders, and heads of universities, and so on, that take the pledge to create uncorrupt institutions that are answerable to by the people. I can't really go into that one too much. It's time to be brave, because if we're a little brave now, we don't have to be we don't have to be like extremely brave in the future. You're a little bit brave, you don't have to take that big step. Massive, we're in a massive spiritual movement. We're in a biblical movement. A lot of people quote the Bible, Revelations and stuff on what's going on right now. I could probably do that. I do feel this is part of the picture, the nature of evil that is unfolded around us. The way the jabs targets the fetus, the amniotic membrane target location is way beyond what Nazis could accomplish. They were working on some pretty extreme stuff. I can't account for it with purely human material process. It's got an element of sophistication and scale that really seems beyond human to me, and to have an element of massive, extensive evil. We don't have the ability, just as human beings, to get out of this. It's too big. I believe that getting out of it requires an awakening that is massive. And for myself, anyways, asking for divine help has worked before. We're not going to get out of this jam that we're in, this coming storm, unless people start to stand up and say no. If you can get this book is a great read. this was basically just an overview of step 10, which is the last step, which is the step we're basically on. A lot of the stuff I read is happening now. It gave some predictions for what's coming up. All I can say is just, we need to wake up. They are pushing their agenda, and we are letting them push their agenda. Until we stand up, we're just all going to be puppets. And who knows what they have in store for us. I can only imagine. I mean, not here. This was kind of a longer video, but I think this was very useful information to go over. Just stay focused on what's happening, and you could pretty much see the direction our country is being taken, right now. It's sickening that these people exist, but this has been happening for years, and we have let it go for years, and now it's to the point that we're on the final step, and if we don't act now, there will be no acting in the future. Alright guys, take care. Leave a comment if you want. Like the video.